All right, episode 4 of the trade guides videos that we have out on YouTube. Atlantic, Central, and Southeast are on YouTube. We are going to do part 4, which is the Southwest Division. The Western Conference Trade Guide is now up on ESPN.com. In-depth analysis on all 15 teams, what to watch, front office history, salary cap information, one trade we'd like to see, draft assets, basically everything you need to know about the Western Conference is now up on ESPN.com. There's also a link on there that you can click onto the Eastern Conference that came out on Tuesday. So we are going to focus. I'm going to pull up, certainly the Southwest Division, starting with the Dallas Mavericks. I think the first thing is certainly going to be Christian Wood. Became extension eligible on Christmas Day. Can sign an extension for 4 years, $77 million. Tim McMahon, our ESPN writer who covers the Mavericks, among other teams, came out and said that Dallas is looking to do something shorter in that 2-year deal. Maybe you can do something with a third year and partially guarantee it. And I think if you're Christian Wood, who has started and has played at a high level, I think in 16 games, 20 points, shooting over 50%, close to 40% from three, you are looking at that 4-year maximum that Dallas can offer when it comes to an extension here. There are 7-8 teams that project to have significant cap space. 2 are those teams that he played for last, which would be Detroit and Houston. So we could probably cross them off the list of teams. That number could grow to 12 to 13 based on what some teams do. And free agency, for example, we could add a team like Sacramento to that list if they don't bring back a player like Harrison Barnes, who is a free agent. So certainly, I think you have to get a comfort level as far as from a Christian Wood perspective, as far as where he is on your priority list here. Comfort level as far as what the price tag is going to be. Are you comfortable letting him go into free agency and running into that same situation you did last year with Jalen Brunson? A little bit different here, because if you lose him for nothing, you are still over the salary cap. So I think that's, I don't think you want to get haunted by that again. So that's going to be the focus as far as for Christian Wood. The other thing, let's say if the Mavericks do trade Christian Wood, the acquiring team is really limited to only giving him a 2-year, $30 million extension. So they can't give him that 4-year, $77 million extension that he's eligible right now because of the extension restriction rules that will go in place 6 months here. So he would likely become an unrestricted free agent. So that's priority 1 as far as figuring out the future of Christian Wood. The second thing is that although you owe New York a pick this year, which is top 10 protected, similar to last year, you do have a bunch of, you've got about 10 contracts ranging from that $10 to $20 million range. Guys from Spencer Dinwiddie and Tim Hardaway Jr. and Dorian Finney-Smith and, Maxi Kleber can't be traded, but you have the contracts and you also have your future draft picks. You can trade a first 2 years after the New York first is conveyed to go out and do a deal. I think it will be interesting. Certainly Tim Hardaway Jr. is that name to keep an eye on. He's got a few years left on his contract as far as from there. I mean, in each team, we have the one trade we'd like to see, and the one I threw out there from Dallas's perspective was Charlotte, right? Rozier, Oubre, Jalen McDaniels for Hardaway, Bertans, and a 2027 top 10 protected that turns into 2 seconds here. I don't know if Charlotte would bite on that based on what's left on Bertans' contract. What's left on Hardaway's contract. Yes, Rozier's got some money left on his also. A few years, I think 2 years guaranteed after this season here. And what is the appeal of a 2027? So from a Mavericks perspective, that's something that would entice me with them. So that's Dallas. Certainly Christian Wood, Tim Hardaway Jr. They do have the contracts out there. Remember, they can trade a first 2 years after the Knick first is conveyed. So they can put language in there that it will be 2 years, which would come out to 2025 if New York receives it this year. The second team, oh, Houston. I mean, I pulled up this stat: 43 and 145 since the James Harden trade. I mean, Eric Gordon made a comment, and I'm sure it ruffled people's feathers inside the organization. Is like, are we getting better? He's like, I don't think we're getting better here. And the more you watch these Rockets, I can't defend them saying they are getting better here. I think the Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. backcourt will eventually need to be addressed, and I think that's something in the offseason here. I don't think that's your backcourt of the future here. And then you are going to need to get a point guard. That is more of a offseason article type dialogue to focus in on. And you see what's going on in Oklahoma City right now. And the reason why Oklahoma City is playing at a high level, they got a point guard. They got an elite guard in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and their other players have bought in. They're not all chasing individual stats here. And I think for me with Houston, the focus is certainly going to be on Eric Gordon. I feel like we've talked about Eric Gordon ever since he signed that extension a few years ago. He's got 2 years left. Next year is non-guaranteed unless the team, if he's acquired by a team, wins the championship year, then a championship this year, then let's say he's traded to the Knicks and they win the championship. Well, that next year is now guaranteed here. Gordon is going to be the focus. He's got 2 years at a pretty good number in that $19 million range. Now, the big thing is that, and I put about 3 different questions when it comes to Gordon, is that what happens when if you trade a player like Gordon for your locker room? Remember, second youngest team in the NBA. Do you need veterans surrounded by these young cores here? And Gordon and Boban are really the only 2 players that are in their 30s. So that's the big question as far as what is his value? Is his value in the locker room more than what his value on the court is? So you've got to figure out what to do with Gordon. I think the next player we have there is KJ Martin, who's having a really good year. Interesting, he's got a team option for next year. If Houston exercises the option, then he becomes an unrestricted free agent. He's extension eligible for 4 years, $58 million. Eventually, you have to start consolidating some of your younger players here, right? You just can't have a roster of 14, 24-year-olds, right? Like eventually, you have to get better. And is he part of your future? If not, can you fetch a first-round pick for him? So, Eric Gordon, KJ Martin, those are the 2 things I certainly need to focus in on. Let's see who we are going to next down here. I'm just scrolling down. Now we look at Memphis. We have Danny Green as the player to watch. You know, Green had that ACL injury in the series, the Miami series, I believe, in the playoffs, while Philadelphia was traded for DeAnthony Melton at first. Do you view Danny Green as more of a value on the court or from a trade perspective? I mean, he's got a ton of playoff experiences, 3 NBA championship, career 39% from 3. It is not in the DNA of the Grizzlies to trade first-round picks. And we talk about that. 11 of the 15 players on your roster are players that Zach Kleiman has drafted. Would you move a first with Green if he can get you back a player like, for example, Malik Beasley, Jordan Clarkson? Maybe not Jordan Clarkson after the Desmond Bane incident, but that's what you're looking at to get some shooting here. Or do you feel like, you know what, Danny Green's our guy. He's our big in-season addition. So that's Memphis as far as what to keep an eye on. With certainly with the Grizzlies, scrolling. New Orleans is interesting. Top 3 team in the Western Conference. Their bench concerns me a little bit. So you've got the contracts: Garrett Temple, Devontae Graham, Jackson Hayes. You've got draft equity out the wazoo as far as what you can go out and get. Do you target a team like Toronto with Gary Trent Jr.? Would a Garrett Temple or a Devontae Graham and Jackson Hayes in a 2027, either your first, the lesser of your first, or maybe that Milwaukee first, get you a player like Gary Trent? Even if you lose him for nothing, in the offseason because Trent's got a player option, and you're close to that luxury tax, then it might be worth the rental if he can win you a few playoff games and you can get to a conference finals. Maybe you get to an NBA finals, because I'm looking at this bench a little bit here, and I know you've got Brandon Ingram out and Zion's out, so that basically pushes 2 players up. But that is a concern for me from the Pelicans standpoint. If there's a little bit of an Achilles, it is the bench. And then there's San Antonio. I mean, the Spurs really kind of dictate. I'm just scrolling down. The Spurs dictate the on a trade meter, we have them as a 10. Cap space and veterans, right? $28 million in room. Pirtle, Josh Richardson, Doug McDermott, Trey Jones. They can extend. What do you do with that money? They're $16 million below the floor. They've got a roster spot. They've got a ton of draft picks here. They're not going to be in a buyer mode. They can buy what teams are trying to push on them. But Pirtle's, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. I saw some reports thinking that he's going to make 20. That's kind of rich. I think good centers these days are 15 to 17 million. He's extension eligible, 4 for 58. I don't think you have to do anything with him just to get rid of him. Like, if there's a team offering 2 seconds, I think you just wait until the offseason, and then you can do a sign and trade, and he won't have base year because you'll be under the cap. So the trades for them, it's like, do you do something for, let's say, Josh Richardson for Patrick Beverley, and if you can get 2 seconds? Is there something out there where maybe you get involved with Phoenix as a third team in New York? Is there a Jake Crowder trade out there where maybe you're taking back an Evan Fournier, Dario Saric, guys like that, and you can get 2 protected first? So keep an eye on San Antonio. They really dictate the trade deadline because they have so much money in cap space. They've got all their draft picks. They're, as I said, they're the veterans with Richardson and Pirtle, and McDermott has got another year. Richardson's on an expiring. I've got Richardson in a lot of different trades I'd like to see out there. So that is the Southwest Division. We've got Dallas, Houston, Memphis, New Orleans, and San Antonio. Have a good day out there.